Um, I did this whole recording and forgot to press the button. Just so you know. So this is actually take two, but we're gonna go from there. I'm gonna finish eating this pizza. Cheers, my beautiful cohort. Of course, I'm bringing out the bourbon. We need some bourbon in our lives to kick off this awesome spring semester. To you, my name is Evie LaRoe. Evie rhymes with Chevy. It's short for Evelyn. And I'm excited to get to know you and share kind of some really cool, intimate moments throughout this entire semester. So I'm going to go through the questions that Dr. Thomas asked. And the first one obviously was the name that you'd like to be called by. But of course, as we know, that's more involved than just a name. So my positionality, I just like to say I'm a white cisgender woman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I think it's very important to also mention I'm a photo-based documentary painter and textile artist. I'm also a singer and songwriter, which some of my cohort has gotten. You're going to see a lot more of it over this next semester. And I am a curriculum developer, educator, and activist. Now, question number 2, your professional background. Well, I have been teaching and been in education for about 18 years. I have almost exclusively been in alternative environments up until 2017. Alternative environments mean spaces that are not typically considered educational spaces. So I have built arts programming in jails and prisons, residential treatment centers, after-school programming, alternative schools. And then in 2017, I moved to China and I built arts programming at all of their international locations and our independent locations in the States for a program called Basis. And now I moved back to the States in June. And I am currently redeveloping and realigning the curriculum at a progressive charter school in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Your current understanding, feelings, thoughts about qualitative research. All right, well, let me just say, one of the first classes that we had to take as a cohort was Dr. K's quantitative research. And I was like, whoa, I have always been a qualitative research person, but you know what? Let's put a little hope in there. Let's throw that in there. And so that was quickly diminished. And I have never cried and struggled so much in my life, and I've never been more proud of a B plus ever. Okay, but I am forever a qualitative girl. And so for my response of what is qualitative research, well, I personally feel like qualitative research is analyzing affective responses or emotions or human research through social action, interviews, and observation. And a couple of examples of that are my master's thesis. So I got my master's of science in art therapy. And what I did for my thesis is I did a phenomenological social action research study. It was called Art Exchange Corresponding Attachment Related Needs with Children and Youth. And what I did is I created 2 social action projects, an international art exchange with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Milwaukee with a Hagwon in South Korea. And we did a couple different interactions there. And the idea behind my study was that I was proposing that these children, attachment disorder is a situation where a proper caregiver was not provided between the ages of 0 and 3. of a child's life. And because of that, they will exert certain behaviors of either trust or overtrust. And my personal belief in the clinical field is that all disorders stem from attachment. Okay. But what I was trying to do with this thesis is, my brother just texted me. What I was trying to do with this thesis is promote that creating or trying to create an alternative way to create this relationship in order to kind of balance out what it is that you didn't have between the ages of 0 and 3. And can art exchange provide that for you if you don't have anything else provided in your life? And how do you relate? And I analyze how you relate to that other person in this relationship. And so the International Art Exchange was with younger kids. They were aged 8 to 12, I believe. And then that fell through because of the funding in Milwaukee. And so then I proposed a youth art exchange with the alternative school that I was working at in Maguadago, Wisconsin, with a program in Santa Fe, New Mexico that worked with adjudicated males in the juvie in Santa Fe. With that one, I physically went to Santa Fe and met the students and was a part of the exchange. But ultimately, that one failed because of the person on the other side did not provide the artwork. And so horribly, I re-traumatized my students in Wisconsin by recreating a scenario where, once again, someone has failed them, and that's actually what my thesis became. And it was a phenomenological research. So I looked, I observed, I asked questions, I went through their artwork and analyzed what was going on. And that's how I came up with all of the results. And it was very powerful. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend phenomenological research for people because it's so right field. It's so, it's hard for people to kind of understand it as being factual, or it being, can I use this research to help my own? But I learned so much from it. And as a matter of fact, I used that technique in another class when we were going through a question of how we related to our own communities and socially, in culturally sustaining pedagogies. So I have felt it very helpful, but it is a pretty challenging, it's a pretty challenging research method. So let me just say that. Another really great one that I conducted was an ethnographic study when I was working in the jails and prisons in California. And I went up to San Luis Obispo in Northern California and went to their prison and did an art therapy workshop. And I worked with a group of men called the Gold Coats. And these are lifers who are kind of searching for a sense of retribution, and so have become mentors and are working with other lifers and those in the hospice care system. This particular prison in California deals with mental health issues and serves hospice care. And I can just tell you that that's the biggest fear in corrections and in prison, is to die there. And so this was pretty much, how they could actualize their lives and be able to be okay with the wrongdoings that they have done. Because by the time you get to prison, nothing is, well, when you work in jail, everything is like, oh, maybe I did that. But once you get to prison, it's like, all right, okay, I did that, and so it's kind of like, how do you deal with that whole scenario? So I did an ethnographic study with the pastor, with the activities coordinator, and with a social worker who I'd been traveling with to all these other prisons. And through those interviews, I was able to get this really exquisite, like complicated, but really interesting kind of study based on the responses of who's providing this help and the responses from the inmates, the gold coats who are giving that. And so I think it's a very profound way of getting research in a qualitative study. And because of that, I'm looking at ethnography as being what I will do for my dissertation as well. The last thing I want to say about this question is I was looking through all the different assignments that Dr. Thomas was asking for, and she allows us to do a multimodal response for each of our discussions and responses. And, you know, my particular challenge for myself is to respond in a multimodal response throughout this semester, and not just one way, but I want to challenge myself in all different ways of artistically responding to it in order to provide some more, just to challenge myself, but also to give you kind of an idea of maybe alternative ways of how your students can respond to your works and lessons and ways of being. And I want you to kind of like call me on that too and be like, Evie, that worked, that didn't work. I liked it, but maybe I could have seen a little bit more from your response, and maybe that will help all of us work together as well. So that's kind of how I want to challenge myself with qualitative research in this class this semester. Number 4, what is your research topic? Well, you know, obviously we all came in with a concept and idea. We all have a subject that we really kind of like attach ourselves to. I think some of us have really kind of still held strong to what we want to do, and a lot of us have kind of veered in a weird, interesting way that we weren't expecting. For me, this entire semester, I'm going to really be focusing on gendered language in curriculum design. I developed my own curriculum, and that is the ultimate research topic. So basically, I am writing, building, directing, analyzing, and publishing a curriculum. And this curriculum is a culturally sustaining, arts integrated curriculum, which now uses non-biased inclusive language and is incorporated in a translanguaging format. Okay, so ultimately that's where I want my dissertation to go. But as a focus, I want to use this semester to really look at how gendered language affects the way and flow and writing of curriculum. And so that's where you're going to see a lot of what I'm doing and understanding in order to add that to my dissertation. As a research, right now I'm looking at participatory action research and ethnographic study. The last question that Dr. Thomas asks us is, what is something about you outside of your professional and doctoral studies? I have 2 comments on this. One is a personal thing, but ultimately relates to what we're doing. I wrote it out. It's a little bit of a diary-esque format, but here we go. I didn't learn how to read and write until I was 8, 3rd grade, by the way. I developed my own language driven by art and creative translation. As a result, I struggled throughout primary and secondary school. The first time I came across project-based learning was at the College of Santa Fe. I was able to respond to my final life science project through a painting. This was in 2002. My master's degree in art therapy was a huge struggle because I didn't know the fundamentals of writing a paper, and I felt shamed. My professors asked me, why am I sabotaging myself? When writing my 120-page master's thesis, I have to say, this was the most challenging experience that I have achieved. I decided to bring art therapy into education instead of the clinical world, which was the big question, like, where are you going to take this? And most of my colleagues went into the clinical. But I went to education because I felt like it provided for and affected a wider audience. As an artist and arts-based instructor, I have always developed my own curriculum. What I was excited to learn, especially coming into this program, is that in the coming years, project-based learning would become a pedagogy, and that art as a language would become a reality. And so I acknowledge that I was one of those kids. I was one of those that struggled and didn't understand the traditional form of learning. And that is the reason why I create the curriculum that I do. Another response to Dr. Thomas's question, which totally has nothing to do, well, again, has something to do with it, is that I actually, I have had a sty for over a year, and I'm actually getting it surgically removed next Tuesday. So hopefully, it will help. I've had a hard time actually like focusing and writing and seeing things clearly on a two-dimensional like digital format. And so I'm really hoping everything will kind of, like make my eye look a little more normal and I will be able to see things better. So there's that. So cross your fingers for me, you guys. Next Tuesday is it's getting out of there. It's finally getting out of there. Other than that, I am just so excited to share and spend some time with you this semester, and really get into some nitty-gritty questions and responses, and have us help each other out, because you guys are the best. So until then, here we go. Bye.